My brother just sent me a video on how European bread and American bread are like incredibly different, and American bread can't even technically be considered food because of all of the different things that are added to it and changed about it. And European bread is better for people with gut sensitivities because it's like a softer wheat or something. So I'm gonna look into it. Let's start off simple though. American bread versus European bread. Let's see here the differences. De la Hart. European wheat slash gluten. This conversation is not for celiacs, people like me. For a person with celiac disease, any gluten at all is a non-starter. This is a conversation for people who have gluten sensitivities. Facts. American wheat is higher in gluten. Wait, does the gluten content in bread vary? Can you have like more or less gluten per bread densities? Does the gluten content vary in bread? Washington Wheat Foundation. I'm going to try something new this video, and I'm going to try and make like a mind map of the journey so I can remember what happened. We searched American bread versus European. That brought us here. And then we searched asking about the gluten content, and that brought us here. It's so cute. Look at our cute little mind map. Gluten content of flour. Flours can vary widely in their gluten content. Hard winter wheat. Gluten formed by two proteins that give the dough a ropey, elastic texture. Winter wheat in the autumn and harvested in the fall. Softer spring wheat are sown in the spring and are more tolerant of warm climates and have fewer gluten-forming proteins. Interesting, but like, what is gluten? I don't have the patience to read this right now. I just want to see something. Gluten explained. I want to know like what gluten is. Like, what is it in the bread? Let's watch a video. Oh, here we go. So here's glutenin and gliadin. These are the two small proteins, and then they bond together to form, the gluten traps air in it, much like a balloon. And then it rises. We're going to do an experiment to feel the gluten. Cake flour contains the least amount of protein. It's bleached. It further weakens the protein. And this bread flour is unbleached and enriched, so it has more protein. 12 to 14% protein. These are two balls of dough with different amount of gluten. But you can't see the different levels of gluten because of the starch. So he's going to wash the starch away. He's washing the starch away in the water. Here's the two balls that are pure gluten, apparently. This is the cake flour. It's not a lot of protein. It's easy to rip. And the dough flour is a lot of protein, and it's very stretchy because the gluten makes it stretchy. Elastic. He's going to take this air compressor and use to fill it up like a balloon. Oop, there it goes. All the gluten holding it together. Bread dough balloon. That's cool. Let's change the search to how is gluten formed. See if that changes anything. Ooh, that looks like a nice animation. Oh, here we go. So here's the gliadin coming in and the glutenin, little balls. Gliadin is long and stringy. And these are amino acids. So when they come together, they unfold, I think because water makes them unfold and kind of bond together, and they form these hydrophobic bonds, and those all tie together in the bread structure in larger networks. And then when you knead the dough, it develops it further, it kind of stretches it and pushes them together. And then gas bubbles kind of form to create that air in the dough. But if you knead it too much, it can cause too much stress on the bonds, which will break them. And then they relax and recoil, and then form new bonds with the neighboring proteins. And the dough will become more and more elastic as it's kneaded and more stretched out. But it will only go so far. So then if you look at the dough, it's got all these little gas pockets inside that are produced because of the gluten. Where's the gas coming from? Gluten bubbles. So if you got fats in there, fats are physically getting in the way of the gluten bonds forming like giant networks. So whole wheat tends to be denser. Oh, here's a little animation of somebody with celiac disease. So this is the intestinal lining in your gut, and these are the villi. I learned about this for a video one time. And these are this is the cell membrane, cell wall. Here is the gluten protein that has been bonded together, the gliadin and glutenin mixed together. It's going to come through the cell wall right here and through the intestinal lining, and then these little pieces of gluten are going to trigger your autoimmune response, which I guess these are the nutrients coming through the wall. That's kind of cool. And then inflammation starts because your body is attacking itself. And it's not good. It will make it so you cannot digest food or like absorb nutrients. Bad news bears. Okay, I think that's gotten us enough into the weeds on how gluten works. Let's see how that relates to gluten in bread. Different types of bread content gluten table. Gluteo something in German. 10 milligrams of gluten per day is generally considered by many experts to be a safe amount for people with celiac. However, gluten is often ingested unknowingly. So if there's on gluten-free label products. Okay, let's see. Gluten levels in cereals and flours. Indication in milligrams gluten per 100 grams of food. Indication in grams of food per 10 milligrams of gluten. Wait, what? I am very confused by these measurements. Wheat, spelt, rye, barley, 9,000. I do not understand how these numbers are stacking up. What the heck is spelt? What is spelt? Spelt is wheat? Is another name for wheat? A species of wheat high in protein, make it considered a health food. It was a staple food in parts of Europe from the Bronze Age to the Middle Ages. Wait, it's high in protein? What does that mean? How can bread be high in protein? How much protein is even in bread? Where does protein in bread come from? The sourdough school. When you say the word protein, many people think of obvious proteins, meats, dairy, bodybuilder shakes. But there's also lots of different kinds of protein in wheat. Gluten is a protein. Oh, duh. Proteins are the things that are found in cells that are made by like chains of something, right? Proteins are large molecules formed by chains of amino acids, okay, often called the building blocks of proteins. Structure and function is determined by the types of amino acids. In the body, proteins are used for growth and tissue maintenance. Nutritionally, there are 20 amino acids. Of those, 8 are essential amino acids, meaning that our bodies can't synthesize them and we have to get them from our food. Wait, there's 20 amino acids? What are these 20 amino acids? 20 nutritional amino acids? I'm not seeing any. Let me look at images. A guide to the 20 common amino acids. I can't see that. Let me look at this page. Make it bigger. Glycine. Is gluten on here? Glutamic acid right here. Glutenin. So these are like the chemical compositions, right? Like OH, chemical structure, single letter code, 3-letter code, DNA codons. Why do some of them have a dashed line and some have a solid line? Essential, non-essential. Amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. There are over 500 amino acids found in nature. However, the human genetic code only directly encodes 20. Essential amino acids must be obtained from the diet, whilst non-essential amino acids can be synthesized in the body. Whoa, you can synthesize amino acids in the body? How do you do that? How are amino acids synthesized in the body? Biology Libre text. 22 amino acids are naturally incorporated into polypeptides. Organisms vary in their ability to synthesize the 20 amino acids. Most bacteria and plants can synthesize all 20. Key points. All amino acids are synthesized from intermediates in glycolysis, citric acid cycle, and the pentose. Okay, this is way over my head and very far afield from what I was actually looking into in the first place. Focus up. Focus, Bob. Focus. Okay, here's our amino acid synthesizing. We looked at amino acids and protein and flour and gluten levels and whoa, we went way off. Okay, let's go all the way back to the beginning. What was this? Differences between European wheat. In Europe, the majority of wheat is grown in soft wheat, lower in proteins. There's a hard red wheat grown in the US. Is there any way to verify that? What kind of wheats are grown in Europe? Let's see. What kind of wheat grown in Europe? Start a new thread here. The Brat box. What makes European wheat so different from its American counterpart? American wheat versus European wheat. Okay, everybody seems to keep saying the same thing. What is actually the difference between? I don't want to know in reference to like America and European because I feel like nobody's explaining it, and I want to know just like what's the difference between the two. Red wheat versus white wheat. The fresh loaf. Wheat, red versus white. Spring versus winter. Hard red wheat versus hard white wheat. I thought the white wheat was soft. Is that not what they said? Hard white wheat was developed from hard red wheat by eliminating the genes for brand color while preserving other desirable characteristics of red wheat. Depending on variety, red wheat has from one of 3 genes that gives the brand its red cast. In contrast, white wheat has no major genes for brand color. The elimination of these genes resulted in phenolic compounds and tannins in the brand, which reduced the bitter taste, and nutritional composition is the same for red and white wheat. Flour from hard red wheat is often preferred for artisan breads. Here's the red wheat and the white wheat. But it says in real life, it doesn't look this stark, so you should keep your grains clearly labeled. This person decided to test the differences. So she ground up hard red wheat and hard white wheat, and then she mixed them into dough, red wheat, white wheat, and then baked them in the oven. So it doesn't look much different on the outside. Here's the red one and the white one. So here she's got them all lined up. This is 50% whole grain, red, white, white. Why should I have two different white ones? And this is 100% whole grain, red and white. Interesting. I don't know that it really answers our question though. What was the question? Red wheat versus white wheat. Let's try this one. U.S. flour. Flavor and taste. Color and appearance. So the difference is color and appearance, flavor and taste, nutritional profile, usage and applications, baking characteristics. The bran layer is removed during the processing of the white wheat, which makes them lower in dietary fiber. The absence of the bran results in a smoother and less fibrous texture. It also contains less protein compared to hard wheat, red wheat. Removing the bran layer reduces the overall mineral content, its vitamins, and their counterparts. Interesting. Let's try one more from this search. Nutrimil. Red wheat is prized for its high protein content and ability to create a strong, chewy texture. Popular choice for bread, pasta, and cereal. White wheat is often marketed as a healthier option due to its low calorie and fat content, commonly grown in the Pacific Northwest, where a cooler, wetter climate is more conducive to cultivation. Nutritional differences. Macronutrients. Red and white are very similar in macronutrients. Both types of wheat contain essential vitamins and minerals, but red wheat is clear winner. In particular, rich in vitamin and B vitamins. Red wheat also contains more iron and zinc than white wheat. Red wheat contains more fiber than white wheat. So I'm pretty sure in that video that I watched, it was kind of complaining about American bread, or kind of calling American bread out, I should say. I'm pretty sure they were talking about red wheat and how it's can cause like gut problems, and I'm wondering if it's because of all the fiber, because it has more fiber than European wheat, maybe. But it doesn't even, I didn't get to the bottom of whether or not European wheat and American wheat are even actually different, or is it just people saying that they're different? Let's try again. Main kind of wheat used in Europe. Agri-benchmark. For the European Union, wheat is cultivated about 50% of cropland. Durum wheat was harvested in the EU. Wheat accounts for 2/3 of all EU cereal export. The distinction is made between soft and durum wheat. Soft wheat is used for baked goods, animal feed, and industrial purposes. Durum wheat is mainly used to produce pasta. Wheat, and not surprisingly, approximately 80% of all durum wheat are destined for Italy. Common wheats. In both wheat production and trade, differences in quality within the dominant species of common wheat or soft wheat are of great import. A distinction is made between bread wheat and high protein content of less than 12%, biscuit wheat, and feed wheat, which has lower protein content. In Europe, high-quality wheat is often used as an admixture to other varieties to improve overall quality. Protein content has a great influence on the baking properties. Russia now dominates the export market. Bread wheat is mainly exported from the EU, and importing countries generally expect a protein content of 12.5 to 13%, as wheat is mainly used for bread production in importing countries. So there's like 3 different types of wheat produced. Bread wheat, feed wheat, and durum, which doesn't tell us anything about compared to America, but it's a start, I guess. Okay, somewhere along the line I saw that white wheat has a lower gluten content. Like, why would it have a lower gluten content? It seems like they're pretty much the same nutritionally. I'm wondering why? Why does white wheat have a lower gluten content? The fresh loaf again. This person is failing to find info. Whole wheat is said to contain little gluten. If gluten is found in the endosperm and whole wheat flour has the endosperm included, why would whole wheat flour not be the gluten champion? That's a good question. Whole wheat flour contains the germ and bran, cannot be milled as finely. Particles end up slashing the gluten formed during kneading, thus resulting in a dough with weaker gluten. I mean, that kind of makes sense as to why it would like not form up as well, because the glutens can't like bond as much, but that doesn't really explain why it has less gluten. Unless it's like separating between the glutenin and gliadin proteins and not letting the proteins bond together, because then that would just have the proteins without the gluten bonds forming, right? The other thing I want to know is why gluten causes bloating or like discomfort in people without celiac disease. Why? Gluten intolerance. It's not a food allergy. Probably about 6% of people that are gluten intolerant. The exact causes of gluten intolerance aren't well understood. Okay, I'll accept that as an answer. I love mind map. I think that should about do it for gluten intolerances and whatnot, the gluten in bread. Let's go back to this original article here and keep learning, because there was a couple different facts that they had written that we were investigating. Okay, fact, American wheat is higher in gluten. I don't know that we learned that there are different types of wheat that are higher in gluten. I don't know that American wheat is higher in gluten. I don't feel like I learned that. The majority of wheat in the US is hard red wheat, and Europe it's mostly white soft wheat. I don't really feel like I learned that either. I feel like they both I feel like they both mostly produce the hard red wheat. And the soft wheat is lower in proteins and thus lower in gluten content, which I also don't feel like we learned because I think I might be focusing a little bit too much on the UK because I really only did research into the UK, but I've heard a lot of people say like Italy and Germany and other parts of Europe have better. Maybe I should have been looking into other parts of Europe as well. But if we're looking at the UK, the protein count was around like 12 to 13% in both the UK and America, so I don't really feel like that's worth noting. But anyway, let's move on to this fact. American wheat is covered in glyphosate. Glyphosate. Okay, I feel like I'm going to have trouble remembering that. Glyphosate is an herbicide, main ingredient in Roundup, used on American wheat to kill bacteria, dry out and prepare the wheat crop for harvest, making the wheat growth process more effective and more profitable. In Europe, this practice isn't as prominent, or it's even banned or heavily restricted in some countries. Unfortunately, glyphosate can disrupt or kill the bacteria in our gut, disrupting our immune system and microbiome. Okay, let's start with... Okay, I feel like I have three main questions here. Let's write them down over here. How common is glyphosate in U.S. crops? How common is glyphosate use on crops in the UK? And what kind of things does glyphosate do to the human body? All right, we'll start with this one. How common is glyphosate in U.S. crops? How common? Investigate Midwest. Glyphosate use 2016. When was this published? 2019. I'm not sure what this graph is showing us. Percentages used. Oh, I guess the darker green ones are more. So dark green, a lot. Light green, not very much. Oh, this is confusing. Way too... These yellow bars are talking about corn, but this is talking about a different type of pesticide. I'm mainly seeing these talk about like corn and soybeans. I don't see anything talking about wheat. Where's the wheat? The standard rate of glyphosate use on crops is 0.75 pounds per acre. However, as weeds grow taller, manufacturers recommend as much as 1.5. Wait, does that mean the weeds are developing a resistance to the glyphosate? Are weeds developing resistance to glyphosate? Wait, really quick, before I do that, what is glyphosate used to kill? I thought it was a pesticide. Pesticide's not used to kill pests? What is glyphosate used to kill? General fact sheet. Glyphosate is an herbicide, one of the most widely used herbicides in the U.S. I thought it was let me look. Is glyphosate a pesticide? Yes, glyphosate, what? U.S. EPA. It's widely used herbicide. It has been registered as a pesticide in the U.S. What? What the heck does that mean? How can it be both? Does that mean it's just really bad news? It kills everything? Yikes. I feel like I hear people say that glyphosate and Roundup are the same thing. Are they There's a picture of Roundup right there. Is glyphosate the same as Roundup? Pintus and Mulla Law Firm. No, glyphosate and Roundup are not the same thing. Roundup is a product that contains glyphosate. Glyphosate is used worldwide in lawn care and ag products. Roundup is a glyphosate-based herbicide. It's a brand of weed killer. Roundup's worldwide popularity and status as the first glyphosate-based product is likely the reason people refer to glyphosate and Roundup as the same thing. So according to the National Toxicology Program, let's look at that. Glyphosate and glyphosate formulations. A chemical that controls weeds and grasses, the most widely used herbicide worldwide. Residual amounts can also get into a person's body by ingesting food or water. Individuals who regularly handle have higher exposures. Okay, there were studies done on glyphosate. Studies found it did not cause permanent changes to DNA, such as gene mutations or chromosomal damage. These kinds of changes to DNA are often associated with increased risk of cancer. Highest concentration of glyphosate used in the human cell cultures were comparable to an adult man drinking about 16 ounces of representative glyphosate-based formulation that contains 41% glyphosate. Jesus Christ, 16 ounces. Okay, so it was just comparable, though. They didn't have an adult man drink 16 ounces of glyphosate because it did not cause DNA damage in the tests that were used. The DNA damage was likely caused by other components in the formulations. Some glyphosate-based formulations caused DNA damage, but they think it was likely caused by other components of the formulation. Herbicide product labels list active ingredients like glyphosate, but other components of the formulation are inert and are not reported due to confidential business information. What the heck? So they can put whatever they want into the herbicides, but they don't have to list it because that's confidential business information. They only have to list the active ingredients. What on earth? Overall, the findings indicate that it's unlikely that glyphosate could cause cancer through genotoxic mechanism that permanently damages DNA, but our findings do not rule out exposure to glyphosate might cause cancer through other mechanisms, like things that weren't listed on the freaking label. Do they have the study for this? Genetic toxicity testing, Smith-Rowe and friends. Abstracts. Evaluation of the herbicide glyphosates. So they're saying, I think this looks like what that article was citing. Conclusion: these results demonstrate a lack of genotoxicity for glyphosate consistent with observations in the NTP in vivo study. It's the NTP. Suggests that toxicity associated with GBFs may be related to other components of these formulations. Okay, let me come back to this lawyer article. The US FDA also makes sure that any herbicide residues found in food do not go beyond EPA standards. Let me just check this out real swift. Final results from FDA's pesticide monitoring. Pesticides are commonly used to control pests. Is this about glyphosate? No, it's just about pesticides in general. Residue in foods below federal limits. Issued final results of its annual pesticide residue monitoring programs for food collected in 2016. That was a while ago. We determined no residues were found in 88% of 891 samples for other herbicide residue levels. Crops including corn, soybean, barley, rice, wheat. 2 soybean samples contained volatile residue. No samples contained volatile levels of glyphosate or glufosinate. Okay, I don't know what to do with this because I do not trust the FDA. I don't know why, but I just feel like, I don't really trust them. I don't really have any concrete reasons as to why. I don't. Okay, let's see. Where were we? What were we talking about? Oh yeah, weeds. Are they developing drug resistance? Herbicide resistance. Whoops, that was kind of a deep rabbit hole. Okay, back to weeds. Let's try this one from Purdue University. This is like a weird booklet. Never mind. The Chemical Institute of Canada. Resistance to glyphosate on the rise. Herbicide glyphosate, commonly sold under the brand name Roundup. Why would they say that? It's not sold as Roundup. It's the active ingredient in Roundup. Why would you not specify that? Did we not just learn like 2 seconds ago that they weren't the same thing? Let me just double check. Am I crazy? Is glyphosate used in Roundup? Do not use the name Roundup when you mean... What is the difference between glyphosate and Roundup? It looks like this might be slightly controversial. Not all Roundup is glyphosate. Yeah, okay. Because glyphosate is so effective, the introduction of Roundup-ready crops set in motion weed management practices that created intense selective pressures for the evolution of resistant weeds. The first cases of resistance arose in weeds within just a few years of the introduction of the system. Biology happens. If we rely too much on any one weed control tactic, there will be negative consequences in the future. Agreed. Evolution of glyphosate-resistant weeds. Let's see. Let's look at this one. Glyphosate, Roundup, and the failures of regulatory assessment. Roundup is the most widely used herbicide in agriculture. Let me just verify that real quick. Is Roundup the most widely used herbicide in agriculture? Economic research. Charts. Okay, according to this, it has been the most widely used herbicide in the U.S. since 2001. Okay, back to this article. Unfortunately, regulators may only assess the active ingredients glyphosate and ignore the toxicity of formulants, which can be far more toxic than the active ingredient. Good God. That's crazy. Okay, I think maybe we've done enough on glyphosate. Where did I even start with this question? Mind map. Yikes. I kind of forgot to update my mind map. Let me know if you like the mind map thing, because it's kind of hard to maintain in the moment as I'm doing research. This one. How common is glyphosate use in the UK? Pesticide Action Network, UK. The world's most widely used herbicide. The International Agency for Research on Cancer labeled glyphosate as probably carcinogenic. That sounds very scientific. Does this tell us about use in the UK? An immediate end to the use of glyphosate in public spaces in our towns. Immediate withdrawal of glyphosate from sale to the public. Call me crazy, but this sounds like it's used in the UK pretty widely. Doesn't sound like it's uncommon in the UK. Let's try this one. Agritech. Glyphosate resistance in the UK. Glyphosate is one of the most frequently used herbicides in the UK. Well, that kind of burst the bubble of this, saying that they don't use it in Europe. Well, actually, okay. Once again, I'm focusing on the UK too much. It says Europe, but definitely in the UK, they use it as much as they do in the US, or close to as much at least. Let me see if there are any other sources. Pesticide Action Network. Say the UK government publishes pesticide usage data. Let's look at that. Doesn't really tell us much. Let's try number of times treated. Cereals. Herbicides. Build a report. There's a lot of numbers. Treated once, treated twice, treated 3 times, 4 times, treated less than 4 times. Wow, okay. That's a lot of numbers. That's fine. I'm not going to go through that. Let's go back to search results. Nature. Glyphosate ban will have economic impacts on European agriculture. Once again, glyphosate is the most widely used pesticide in Europe. Okay, so that's not just the UK. But I guess they're trying to ban it. Glyphosate ban. When was this published? 2023. It sounds like this is going to mostly talk about the economic implications of glyphosate ban. I'm okay with that. Let's see if there's any other points she makes about glyphosates. Herbicide. Main ingredient Roundup. Thank you for specifying. Used to kill bacteria, dry out, and prepare the wheat crop for harvest. Wait, how did I not? I didn't hear anything about that. It's used to kill bacteria? It's used to dry out and prepare crops for wheat harvest? Hold on, now I gotta look at that. Does glyphosate help to prepare crops for harvesting? Glyphosate, not glyphosate. I keep wanting to say glyphosate. Let's try Oklahoma State University. Glyphosate is labeled as pre-harvest weed control. In the southern Great Plains, glyphosate is used sparingly as pre-harvest weed control option in wet years. Occasionally, wet field conditions after the wheat has matured creates a prime environment for summer weeds to grow at a rapid rate. Actively grown weeds in an otherwise dead field can prevent harvest issues. In this instance, a grower may choose to apply glyphosate to prevent harvest problems. Harvest weeds might include damage to field equipment, increased grain moisture, which can cause storage problems, and foreign material or trash in the harvested grain. In some spring wheat areas, farmers may use these applications to achieve more uniform drying of wheat plants while controlling weeds. It's important to notice that the grain is not exposed prior to harvest. Individual grains are encased in the glume. Think of the glume as an envelope covering the seed from the elements and holding it in place till harvest. The threshing process separates the grain from the glume, and the glume is discarded, even in whole wheat. Because the glume is discarded, the wheat coming into the consumer market does not have unsafe levels of herbicide residue on it. Huh, interesting. What does wheat even look like? The anatomy of wheat. Got your endosperm, bran, germ. Where's the glume at? Show me the glume. Okay, so on the little wheat plant, you got your, wow, those are quite long. You've got your ovary. There's a glume right there. The dark green part around the outside. That's not covering the whole thing, though. This isn't telling us a lot. Let me search. Do pesticides get past the glume on wheat? Separating empirical wheat from pseudoscience. A critical review of the literature surrounding glyphosate, dysbiosis, and wheat sensitivity. Wow, this article seems like it might be out for blood. Glyphosate's effects on this. Clinical trials have shown that gluten from wheat is not responsible for causing symptoms in healthy individuals, suggesting that something else is inducing symptoms. The herbicide glyphosate is applied to wheat crops before harvesting. Oh, it seems like they're making the case that people who are going gluten-free are not seeing benefits because of the gluten is being removed. It's because the herbicides are being removed from their diet. I could see. However, research on glyphosate's effect on the microbiome suffers from numerous methodological weaknesses, and these limitations make it impossible to draw any definitive conclusions regarding glyphosate's influence on health. In this review, we critically evaluate the evidence currently known. What the? You didn't even give me an answer. Why would you set me up like that and then just say, oh, we're going to talk about it in the paper? Come on now. What's an abstract even for? Let me look through this a little bit. Here's a chart. Wheat, corn, soy, oats. Who the heck made this chart? Do you see these colors? Are these colors different? No, they're exactly the same color. How am I supposed to tell these apart? Okay, let me go back. Prairie, California. The truth about toxic wheat. So these people are farmers. Farming is not black and white. Farming is not one size fits all. There are no absolutes in farming. For each different variety of wheat, whether it's durum, hard red spring wheat, soft red winter wheat, there are different production methods for each one. But farmers do their best to follow best safety practices. It's not always easy. I believe that. Pre-harvesting wheat. What does that mean? Only about 5% of the total production practices this pre-harvesting. Pre-harvesting wheat with glyphosates is not something the majority of wheat farmers across the nation do. Small sector, only about 5%. It is not encouraged to be used in seed, wheat, or malt barley due to the fact that glyphosate can interfere with germination process after harvesting. Pre-harvest on feed, barley, and wheat only. So they're not pre-harvesting. They're not spraying the glyphosate, the Roundup, on the crops before harvesting for like bread wheat or human eating wheat, right? Is it safe? Okay, he doesn't really talk about whether or not they use it to dry out or kill bacteria, which is like what the original question was. But I like the vibes of this article. They cover a lot, and I feel like they make a pretty good case that farmers are people too, and they're doing their best. And farming is hard. I think I want to move on. Back to this poor blog article that I'm just going over with a very fine tooth comb. I'm sorry, little De La Hart article. I'm not calling you out, okay? I'm not. Seems like they've done a decent job researching the available materials. All right, on to fact number 3: soil type and growing methods. American wheat is grown in sulfur-deficient soils. Concentration of sulfur in the soil regulates the amount of gliadin proteins. Less sulfur in the soil, more gliadin in the gluten. More sulfur in the soil, less gliadin in the gluten, which means that American gluten is likely to be higher in gliadin than normal and therefore more reactive. I just realized she has sources cited. I probably should have looked at that originally. Let me look at her sources. Is American wheat different than European wheat? The European Union produces 5 billion bushels of wheat each year. Around 60% of U.S. wheat production is hard red and 23% consists of soft wheat. This link. Wheat overview. Production. Agricultural marketing resource. Soft red winter wheat represents 23% of wheat production and 60% is hard red. I don't really care that much about this. Let's look at the other source, the Urban Monk. What's the guts reading? 23% of wheat crop is white wheat. I feel like everybody's just citing everybody else. I don't really feel like very many people did their research from the original articles. It's making this a little confusing. Glyphosate is the villain once again. I'm not gonna lie, my brain is getting a little tired. Let's look at this final article she's cited. American wheat versus European wheat. The benefits of going to the bakery. The only ingredients needed to make a loaf of bread are wheat, salt, and water. Why preservatives are destroying your digestion. I feel like that is worth looking into. Preservatives. I should probably look into preservatives. That's a good idea. But I think that's a topic for another video. I think I'm done looking into this. Thanks for hanging out. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.